Good morning, I think, for most of us in this part of the world. So good morning. My name is Dallas Jackson. I am coming to you from Auckland, New Zealand. And today we're going to be talking about an amazing framework that really is going to change the way that we talk about leadership styles. And we are going to chat about it for the next hour. And by we, I mean that we are joined by Chris, who is phenomenal. Chris, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good to be on this call with you. And it's funny because you say morning. I'm in Dallas, Texas. It's 7 o'clock at night. I've had a long day and now I get to hang out with you guys. So this is really good. I'm the vice president of training, the global master trainer, and I've had the privilege of working with this model since 2003. And then I've been working for the center for the last 18 years, traveling the globe, working with leaders, sharing this great model. Behind me, you'll see Dr. Paul Hersey, who created this content. He passed away in 2012. It's one of the last posters that he hand drew. So I love, it keeps me honest, Dallas, that it's behind me because I feel like he's always watching. And so I was given my master trainer certification by Dr. Hersey, and then I've been leading our global training team. And just lucky to be hanging out with you today, Dallas. Pretty cool.
I love that so much. I have some mentors up here as well watching over me, namely my mentor from 20 years ago. I feel like we could, like, if our careers were children, they'd be adults right now. And that just makes me feel just a little, let's not talk about it. And do not worry, the irony of the fact that Chris is in Dallas and my name is Dallas is not lost on us. I am in this side of the world now. I've been here around 3 years. Again, I said my name is Dallas Jackson. I'm a trainer, coach, consultant, knowledge engineer. I know all the things for Skills Development Group. And this is actually one of the new exciting offers that we have. And so today, Chris and I are just going to really chat about what is the benefit here? What is it? And why should you be paying attention to you? And what is it going to help you with? So the interesting thing is, when we talk about this, we sometimes think about leadership as this skill that is soft, as they say, or it's kind of nebulous. But the interesting thing is the World Economic Forum puts together a future of jobs report. Thanks, Chris, every year. And this is it for 2025. So this is not 10 years old. This is not, from the 1990s. This is now. Now, notice that third one right there, leadership and social influence. Leadership is this word that I think some people think about as a noun, and I'm going to invite consideration for it to be a verb for this upcoming webinar, and actually just in the future, right? What Chris is going to so eloquently put together for us is the fact that, like, sometimes we have success in one area and we use that over and over and over again. We think repetition is the sign of success. Like when my dad used to say, like, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And whereas, yes, that is true, we have a whole arsenal of tools that we can pull out from. And what this model does is it actually puts that word leadership into the verb, and it puts it into the fact that we need to provide context. We need to understand who we're leading, what we're leading, in order to understand how we need to lead going forward. And that influence as well. Right? Influence. It was really funny. Chris and I were chatting before everyone came on, and we were talking about influence, and particularly Robert Cialdini's work around the influence factors. And when we influence, we have to follow some of these. Just because we're hierarchically, above you or you report to us, doesn't mean that we're actually going to influence in the way that we want to. Influence and leadership are orthogonal. So when we want to start influencing, we have to look at the person on the other side of the conversation and see what their needs are, right? That's part of liking. It's part of unity. all of these principles of influence that are going to be much easier when we start thinking about leadership as situational. Chris, what are you seeing? Like, what are you seeing globally that this framework is the solution to? Like, what breakdowns are you seeing?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. And great setup too, Dallas. And I love that we started with, hey, this is 2025. This is the future of jobs report. So I just, as I look at this, I'm hearing this in the classroom as I'm spending time with leaders or as executive coaching. And one of the things that we spend time talking about, and we do a lot of research with our client base, is what are some of the top global workforce challenges. So we are the global home of situational leadership. It's not just this American type model. It's like what's going on and what are the challenges. So we spend time hearing from clients and doing research to find out what are we seeing. And I like the alignment with some of the skills you just had on the previous slide, Dallas, and the challenges that we're seeing. And so we want to make sure that this model, as we talk today about situational leadership, like it's classic, it's been around 55 years. I mean, we've trained 15 million people in this content, but it's also modern. We continue to update it and keep it relevant to these type global workforce challenges. I don't know if the audience has capacity to chat. I don't know if that's turned on in this capability, but I'd love to just hear from the people listening. We have a lot of people logged in. What are some of the challenges that you see? Like, what does it look like? What's some of the top ones on this list? So we know AI is integrating itself into the workforce. We're talking about that turnover, engagement, burnout. Like these are things that we're hearing when we spend time with leaders. And so to your question, I mean, Dallas, what we think is critical is that we can equip leaders with the skills to deal with these challenges. You're spending a lot of time coaching leaders as well. I'm wondering what stands out to you off of this list that you're spending time with leaders and hearing about.
Change. Like
Yeah.
that's what's here, right? And
Okay.
as much as we love to think that humans love change, it's actually the opposite. We want to biologically stay in a comfortable, safe place. And so, with the introduction of artificial intelligence, with the introduction of burnout, what technologies, right? Like, I like to call myself a recovering developer because that's how I started my career. Evolving technologies, no one should hire me for any sort of coding right now because it has changed so much. And there's other factors as well. There's uncertainty, and that leads to more fear. Am I going to lose my job if I don't change? Am I going to, am I going to not be able to do the things that I love because, I'm misunderstood or I'm not getting the support that I need? And I
Yeah.
think that when we attach it to change, that's why it's persistent. That's why it has always been valuable, right? Because like as beautiful as we are and as great, as the technology evolution is, we are still little critters running around and we have
Yeah.
biology that we cannot fight. And so when we acknowledge that, we put ourselves into the place of being able to find grace and talk to the people and coach the people in front of us, not the
Yeah.
people that we want them to be, not the people that they were, and not in any other context. Being present with the person is the thing that alleviates fear, right? Humans want to be seen and heard. And part of that is I need to be led in the way that's positive and supportive for me.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that in. Like, I remember asking Dr. Hersey, like, what would you say is the main functionality? What's the main purpose for situational leadership? And he said two things. He said it's performance, impacting performance, and leading change. So I appreciate you bringing that in. This is really a change model if you think of it that way. And look, as we spend time working with leaders, we talk about two fundamental areas or maybe two critical indicators that leaders are focused on when they're influencing the behavior of another. And look, if you're listening to me right now, you're a leader because you influence people. And so think about how you fit with this. So we think about success. These are the behaviors, the results. I know I'm responsible for results and measures and KPIs. So part of my influence is to accomplish results. The other part of my influence, if I get it right, if I'm aligned with my leadership style, is to make sure that people are engaged. So think about those two factors. If you have ever had a leader who overled, a micromanager, think of the impact that person had on success and engagement. Or if you had a leader who just didn't give you any direction and left you on your own to kind of decide for yourself, then it was the same. Like, it has an impact on success and engagement. So we feel like the situational leadership model equips leaders to choose a leadership style in the moment that gives the highest probability of success and the best impact on engagement. Now, if I go back just, Dallas, to that last list, what I think is interesting is if we take these challenges, it feels to me as they fit in one of those two categories, right? Some of these are success results oriented challenges where we need to spend our time. And then some of these are engagement oriented challenges. So when we think about situational leadership, we think about what's the impact success and engagement have on each other. I mean, if I've worked for a leader who only cared about results, and you just saw people on the right side burn out, turnover, like, because this person was pushing and driving results and not paying attention to people, it had the adverse effect on the morale and on the culture. So what I see is when you put these challenges into the list, some of those are results oriented, some are engagement oriented. And what we feel like this model does, we feel like this model equips leaders to meet people where they are, to meet their needs in such a way that we can improve results and we can ensure that there's engagement. So that's really where I feel like it connects to some of those global workforce challenges.
Yeah, we had a comment in the Q&A, and it was key challenges is constant change for sure, plus multi-generational workforce.
So good.
It's so true, right? Now we have the most generations ever in the workforce.
Yeah.
And that has implications on our leadership styles because we have to be so adaptive. We have multicultural or multi-generational and also multicultural, right? Chris, when we were prepping for this, I was really advocating for the fact that this isn't just an American framework. This is something that is prevalent and useful everywhere because it's about the person in front of you. And with, I've coached around the world, and culture is a massive, massive influence on the way we lead. And what this does is it gives us some simple roadmap to say, I said simple, not easy.
Yeah,
simple roadmap
right.
to really presence ourselves to the person in front of us, the situation, and what needs to happen in that moment, not with the history or what's always worked. And it's just a really great way to pull out and say, okay, what is true versus leaning on those cognitive biases that we have.
So good. 2 points I just want to make. One is, it looks like that the chat is disabled, and I'm not sure how to fix that, but I do know that people can chat in the Q&A portion, so at least we can see dialogue. And I appreciate the chat that's already in there, because we want to hear kind of what are you seeing, what are you thinking. But Dallas, you're exactly right. I've trained this now in 34 countries, multiple times in many of these countries, and it's culturally relevant because it's what you said. You've said it twice now. The person standing in front of you. This model allows you to meet them where they are. So I really appreciate that language. And look, as I came on board at the center, I wanted to hear from Dr. Hersey. Like, where did this come from? Why is it relevant? Why was it needed? So I'll give you a little history, and then I thought I would just build out the framework briefly, and then we'll have it on the screen and we can dialogue around that. Is that an okay use of our time?
Yes, absolutely. And also, anyone who has a question, please write it. This is a dialogue, right? We do not have a script. As you can see, we're just bantering. And this is the good stuff, right? We're not here to just regurgitate what we know. We want you to take something away. So please ask those questions in the chat, and I would throw something at Chris if we were in the same room, but I'll just rudely interrupt him
Yeah,
when we
you
go
can do
there.
that anytime. Anytime. Well, I do remember sitting with Dr. Hersey when he hired me years ago and wanting to know what was the history of the model. So just a quick piece on that. And it was this. It was, look, traditionally it was believed and well received that leadership was a genetic trait. You were either born a leader or you were not. That was really the divide, and people bought into that. But as Doc would describe it, as things evolved and the industry boom evolved and those type things happened, there was a higher demand for leaders, and we had to learn how to teach it. So he was a behavioral scientist, and he partnered with universities and other behavioral scientists, and they began to research and study what does it take to make a successful leader. Here's the hypothesis. He said, we thought we would follow around great leaders. We would observe them in a variety of organizations, and we would identify the fundamental, most prevalent, and the most effective leadership style. So his hypothesis was we'd identify a style we would teach other people. And he said, what we found very quickly in the research is probably what all of us already know. There's no one best leadership style. We know that, right? Sometimes I need to be directive. Sometimes just give autonomy, get out of the way. Sometimes supportive, encouraging. And so what came out of the work, and it's an integration of a lot of work that was happening on motivation, whether you're thinking about Herzberg or Maslow or Elton Mayo, and a lot of stuff that was happening around leadership, whether it was McGregor or Ohio studies or Michigan, like there was just all this research that integrated into a framework. And here's what he said. This is what stuck. This is a probability model that gives me the highest probability of success when it comes to influencing the behavior of another person. It's not exact. It's probabilities because we're dealing with people. The other part that was really important in his conversation with me was it's a model, not a theory. And I love that
Love
distinction,
that
Dallas.
distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, because a model, theories are great. They give you things to assimilate and to process and think about, but models can be applied. And that's where we have the most success putting this in front of leaders. It's not theoretical. It can be immediately applied. So that's what I appreciate and so I'll take off down the path of just showing you how it builds, but I'll give you a space because you can't throw anything at me. So you might want to say something here. Go ahead.
There is a question, and I think it lends into kind of the conversation we were talking about. In what way does the framework address healthy high performance? And what would you describe as healthy?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah,
let
me build a little bit of this content and see if I can use the content to answer that, because those are definitely the right questions, and I appreciate that. Look, when you look at the top of the model.
Sorry, Chris. There's a second
question
yeah, hit me. As we walk through it. As an emerging leader, how do you best build confidence with challenging conversations? So I know that you're going to address those, but I wanted to point those out before you.
Yeah, thanks. I have the QA slide, the chat open in front of me. So let's keep monitoring those. Awesome. So thank you. Let's hit both of those. Let me get a little bit of this framework underneath us, and then I think it'll help me navigate both of those critical questions. If you just think about the top of the model for a moment, what you see, this 4-box grid, actually it represents 4 leadership styles. And so if I put across the bottom there, as you see, task or directive behavior, it just means I'm guiding someone through a process. Here's what I need, here's when I need it, providing structure. And then if you look at the y-axis, we'll put relationship behavior or supportive behavior. And that's really about having conversations, having dialogue. It doesn't imply we have a relationship. It's more about asking good questions and providing praise and support. I'll also note that I will be using the words in black, task and relationship behavior, but the words in red, those are synonyms that work as well. Some people feel better about using directive and supportive behavior. So if you're following along and you build the model, you choose the word. We don't really get hung up on the word as long as you understand the behavior. Now, here's what's important about this model, and I heard Dr. Hersey say this so many times. This is a follower-driven model. And when we say follower, it's not connected to hierarchy. It's just saying in the transaction of influence, the person I'm leading or the person I'm influencing, they're the follower and I'm the leader, even if it's my boss in that interaction. So if you hear me say follower, just know that's absence of hierarchy in that conversation. It's not implied that there's a reporting relationship. But because it's a follower-driven model, I really want to start at the bottom. Okay, because the bottom is where the follower or the performer is actually diagnosed. Now, the way this works is I look at, before I decide which of the four styles, and I'll build those out in a moment, but before I decide which style to use, I have to diagnose the person's performance readiness. And when we say performance readiness, that R stands for readiness. It's just saying, how well are they performing that specific task or that specific activity? Now, not overall. That's an important piece of this model. It's not how I diagnose a person overall as an employee, but it's how I diagnose them for the specific task in which I'm leading them on. So if they're at readiness level 1, I would say their performance is pretty low. At readiness level 2, again, the R stands for readiness, their performance readiness is starting to improve. When you get to readiness level 3, then we're saying they're performing at the standard, this moderate to high, and then at readiness level 4, that and Shirley, that's really, to your question, that's really where we see high performance. Is someone is performing at a high level, they're at a readiness level 4. That means their ability, their knowledge, experience, and skill are really strong, and their willingness and confidence is really strong. Their motivation is high. And so when they're at R4 for a task, then I'm careful not to overlead, but to provide the autonomy. So I love that question. But when I look across the bottom, kind of the starting point is not which style is most comfortable for me, not which style do I love using, but it really starts with where are their needs from a performance standpoint? What's their performance readiness? Now, you know this, Dallas. You're one of our great facilitators of this content, but what it says is readiness is about what's their ability and what's their willingness. Some of that's external, some of that's internal. Like there's a lot there that's happening. Even the other question about how do you best build confidence for having a challenging conversation? I love that question because that's saying, let me look at their willingness, their confidence, their commitment, their motivation, and then let me let me diagnose their readiness to have those conversations, and let me provide the appropriate leadership style. And so if I pause at the bottom, it's saying, let me think of what am I trying to lead the person on? I'm just going to call that the task. Okay. So, or you could call it the activity, whatever you want to focus on. What am I leading? And then secondly, what's their performance readiness? Now that I know that, that's when I choose the style. So that's really the third step, is choose the style. And think about that. That's so obvious. If I go to a doctor and my physician is going to prescribe a treatment plan, I appreciate that first she diagnoses so she can prescribe the proper treatment plan. So I think that's what's happening here. Let me diagnose the readiness level properly so then I can prescribe the appropriate style.
And Chris, that is where so many theories, so many ways of doing things fall down. Because it's, well, here is one tool for all. Yeah, and that just doesn't honor humanity, and it doesn't honor the fact, right? It's task specific, right? I am awful at task. Like, please just don't ask me to create something as art. Like, it's bad, it's terrible. I have no willingness. So if I have to do it, you are going to be you're going to be there. However, a coaching conversation around, systems theory, get out of my way. And so it's about the task. Yeah, we are so multidimensional as people that I think some of the frameworks and things out there can actually fold into this. As long as you do what this does, you triage, you diagnose first.
Yeah. I think it's the miss. We lean into what's comfortable for us, and the intentionality of this framework is to pause and diagnose first. Yeah, so that's really well said. And when you look at how it's set up, I called it a probability model earlier. So you see, if someone is R1 for a task, then the highest probability match is S1. It's even color coded, so I can't miss it, right? So when someone's R1 for a task, what they need from the leader is S1. I'm thinking of a sales organization I'm working with right now, Dallas, and they was talking about one of the top sales people there, and her name was Grace. And one of the things I found out about Grace is she's not great at expense reports. So she doesn't fill them out on time. She doesn't get those done. So she's actually R1 for that task. And what she needs from her leader is telling S1, hey, make sure your expense reports are done on time, use the proper documentation, use the right mileage rates. But what's great about Grace, and I've known Grace for a while, she's pretty amazing. She's also learning some new skills because we're working with different tools than we've used before with our global audience. And so because of this, she's R2 for some of these new tools. She's not used them before, but she's eager to learn how to use them. And you know what she wants to know? Why should I use this and how does it work? That's what style 2 is. Selling implies, let me explain the why. Let me give you the big picture. So telling is, let me get you moving, and selling is, let me explain the why. And so I appreciate watching this leader work with Grace because she doesn't, here's the point, she doesn't need the same style for expense reports that she does for using these global tools. Now, one of the things she's had to do recently is she's had to get in front of some larger global clients where English is not their first language. And so that's been a unique challenge, and she's really leaned into it. But what she wanted, moderate to high performance at R3, what she needed from her leader is, let's have conversation. Before I get on this call, this Teams call, before I fly over to London and spend time with them, or to Saudi Arabia or wherever those clients are, let's have some conversation. So I appreciate style 3 because the leader's not giving her the answers, but this leader is a sounding board. Let's talk. It's kind of a we talk, you decide. Let's discuss it, but Grace makes the decision. She just gets to vent or process with the person. And then she's so good at so many things, but when it comes to just explaining some of our capabilities as an organization, she's R4 for that. And so it's kind of what you described with R4, just get out of the way and watch her because she's amazing. So when it comes to that, all she needs is delegating. And so what I appreciate about that is this one person has all 4 readiness levels depending on the task you're focused on, and she needs all 4 leadership styles.
I also have you come, I'm sure you have. What happens when you come across someone who so if you're influencing me, I'm usually at like S3, like I'm pretty awesome. And it's the same task, and I've just had like a bad day, and I'm just like, just tell me what to do. Like I just need you to tell me what
Yeah,
to do.
yeah,
What does that dynamic how does
yeah.
that dynamic work in this model?
First of all, you are pretty awesome. So I agree with your first statement. But secondly, when you're just having one of those days where you want to check out and just like, well,
Yeah,
maybe not
right.
at whatever calls that. But I mean, I think when you have those moments, like as a leader, I'm still not going to take over for you, but I'm going to be an ear and I'm going to ask good questions. I'm going to provide some encouragement. And I want to, hey, help me understand what's going on. It feels like you've had a challenging day. Talk me through that. What's keeping you from doing this work? Like, I don't think even in those situations, Dallas, you need me to step in and go all the way to style 1, but I think you need to be heard
Mm.
and let's process that together. And then you're ready to move in. So I think it's okay that sometimes we don't feel like doing the work or that we've had a rough week. I still don't think I would jump in and take over as the leader. I think I would just process it with you. That's a good question.
There's a question in the chat as well, with regards to readiness. So for readiness,
Mhm.
is it useful to think about how clear they are about what's required
Mhm.
and environment that they are working in with its constraints and enablers, in addition to being capable and motivated?
Oh, man, those are so many good questions.
I
And
know, I'm like, oh,
we're doing a 35 minutes of teach here, and I need the day in the classroom. So whoever that is, let's get in the day. Let's spend the
yeah.
day together because those are all the things we address when we think about readiness. As a matter of fact, I'll show it here in a moment. The first step of the model is exactly what was put in there. It's ensure that there's task clarity. Like I can't just say, "Hey Dallas, I need you to do an assessment with this executive." and just assume that you and I would choose the same assessment, that we know how the conversation would like. First step is clarity for the task. And then readiness. In readiness, we do consider environmental factors. We talk about what's going on because we could, even though it's about the task, we consider the whole person and what's the environment they're in, what's the pressure of the organization, what are the resources they have, what's their motivation level, and what's driving that, intrinsic or extrinsic motivator. So yeah, a lot of those things we really address before we even get to, okay, now what's their ability to take this on? So I really appreciate that. I'll show you a couple other things with this model that I feel like are helpful. One is I love this red line down the middle. And here's why. If you didn't hear anything else I said today, and I said, let me just tell you the two fundamental mistakes we see from leaders. One is they overlead, or two is they underlead. So think about that. Which way do you fall? You're either too hands on or too hands off, or maybe you get it right all the time. I know I don't. My tendency is maybe to give people credit for potential and then under lead and not give enough direction, if I can be honest. So here's what I appreciate about the red line, because on the right side of the red line, I would be using style 1 and style 2. So that would be the leader directed side of the model. That just means I'm making the decision, I'm providing the guidance. Style 1 is I talk, I decide. Style 2 is we talk, I decide. So 1 and 2, you talked about change earlier. I'm leading people through a new back office change process. You know what they need? Style 1, style 2, right side of the model. But also, I need to recognize when people are on the left side of the model because they're more self-directed. And so think of the pain here, Dallas, just for a moment. When you're in your lane and you're performing at a high level, you're on this left side of the model, but the leader's leading from the right side of the model. I mean, that's painful. It's a micromanager. You're wearing me out. Or the other side is you're newer to the task. You haven't mastered it yet. You're not even sure where to start, but the leader's on the left side of the model, providing encouragement and delegating. So our goal is not to overlead or underlead, is to meet people exactly where they are. And that's what happens with that line. If I can at least be close, I say this all the time, but close counts in this model. We say that about other things, darts and horseshoes or whatever those things are. But I think in this model, close counts. And I should be on the same side they are on. And that's what was pretty helpful. So that red line always stands out to me as a priority. I'll pause because I know you have some good thoughts around this one as well.
What you just said just kind of made like a synapses fire. I'll admit it, I'm an overleader, like for sure, for sure.
And self-aware. I
And
appreciate
yeah,
that.
right. The interesting thing is something that really helped me that this model is like, oh, like it feels like it's given me new interest in the delegation levels. And there's levels across the board. But this is true delegating, right? It's not telling people what to do, when to do it, how to look at it, right? Which is some people think is delegating, right? That's telling. That's on the other side. And
That's
so
right.
when I overlead, I kill morale. And
That's
I
right.
feel, what is the relationship between that? And are we just self-perpetuate the unwillingness that happens? And do we push people almost back when we overlead and stay there because that's how we do it? We'll just try harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to success and engagement for me. Like when you overlead, you cripple engagement, right? And you hinder success.
Yep.
And when you underlead, it has that same impact. Yeah, I appreciate the comments there. One thing I wanted to address that was in the chat earlier is when we think about, and this is interesting for me, when we say this model is how I lead a person for a task, most people think of technical skills, kind of those hard skills as a task, like putting together a budget or going through the funnel in Salesforce or putting together a presentation. And that's true. But one of the things that was asked earlier is, as an emerging leader, how do you build confidence with challenging conversations? So I'm coaching a person right now, and that's her biggest challenge. She can't have the harder conversations. I mean, we call them fierce or crucial, whatever you want to, like, she can't lean into that. And so I would say she's probably R1 for that task. But what I wanted to point out is a task can also be a behavior. If you're a coach, if you're an executive coach, or as you're leading people, I'm coaching this person right now on the task of having a hard conversation. So she is R1 for that. So she needs S1. She needs guidance, direction. Here, watch me. Now you do it. So the mistake I would make is say, well, you can have it. You'll be fine. Just have the conversation. Well, that I've delegated something where she's R1. And actually what she needs is structure and step-by-step role model of how to do it. So I wanted to just point out that this model is how I lead or coach for any specific behavior. If I go back to that World Economic Forum's report that you put up, I mean, we talk about agility and technology literacy and technical savvy, and like all of those are tasks. When I'm coaching people, I need to decide what's their readiness to take that on and what style do they need from me to be successful. And so the last thing I'll show, and then I'll throw it back to you. I see some more questions have come in as well. But there was a great question earlier, Dallas, about making sure they're clear on the
Yeah.
expectation. And that's, if you look to the left, this is the model I've been building all day, for a few minutes. Let me guard my words, but also these are the 4 steps of how it's applied. And so the first step is exactly what was put in the note, and it's identify the task. And you know what that means is identify the task, ensure clarity. If I'm asking you to accomplish this task, step 1 lets me slow down and make sure you and I have mind share. We have the same picture of performance in our mind. So I love that comment earlier. Once we're clear on the task or the behavior that I'm leading, now I assess readiness. That's step 2. That's what's happening here. And then step 3 is use the style, match and communicate the leadership style. Step 4 is pretty intuitive, but we often mess that up as leaders, or I should say I do. And that is watch which way they're moving. Is they're continuing to progress towards the left? I can't stay here. I have to move with them, or people regress. Stress causes regression, change, fatigue. So I need to move back. So that manage the movement just says this is not a one-time interaction, but it's an ongoing conversation.
Hey, I love that. I think about moving to New Zealand, and I mean, this is a silly example, but driving on the left side of the road,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just like whiplash back to this one. I'm like, okay,
It's a
checking my
great one.
nerves, right? And I think that I also think that this model gives a way for us to articulate that, because it's hard. It's hard to say, "Ooh, I was really great at that. I've backtracked a little bit or regressed a little bit, and I just
Sure.
need a different kind of support," right? Our
Yeah.
ego,
Good.
unfortunately, sometimes gets in the way of that. And so this language
Yeah.
um, is really helpful. Shirley asked something in the chat, and she asked, "Is it useful to take this model to discussions to help decide approaches to
Mm.
collaboratively set expectations between leaders and followers?"
Oh my goodness. So good.
It's so good, right? And I
Love that
there's a
question.
story in my head about this. I'm from Texas, and I was a cheerleader. I grew up where Friday Night Lights was filmed, so American Gridiron kind of is in my blood. And my son asked to play rugby when he came over to New Zealand. Besides my heartbreaking, I went to my first rugby game, and I was watching, and it looks kind of similar, and it looks like if you squint real hard, it's like the ball's kind of the same shape, but it's like, why are they throwing the ball backwards? Like, why are they calling it a try when they clearly succeeded? And then someone asked, or someone was like, Liam would make a good hooker. I'm like taking my earrings out. I'm like, what did you just say? Position in rugby, right? And so, and the reason I talk about that is I was watching that game, and it is my baby boy. I should be proud. I should like be bursting. But I was agitated. I was confused because I didn't know the rules. And
Yeah.
so the
Good.
long-winded answer to this, Shirley, is, man, understanding what the rules are or what the model is that we're talking about
Yeah.
actually gets people to be able to say, hey, this is how I support, now I know how to cheer for rugby, right? Like I know what a lineup is,
So good.
like,
Yeah.
but it's shared language. right?
Hmm.
Humans are linguistic creatures. If we can share that language, if we can talk from the same way or the same vernacular, it's so helpful, and it just lowers all of those collaboration
Yeah.
and communication issues that we have. So this isn't just for, I can't use air quotes, but quote unquote leaders, hierarchical leaders. This is
Yeah.
about leading, it is
Mhm.
about leading. And so really using that as a verb. So Shirley, sorry, yes, is the short answer for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to hit that just for a moment
Yeah,
because
please.
I think leadership's not what you do to a person. It's the conversation you have with the person. So this is a framework that allows for that collaborative conversation. I tell you what makes it beautiful. My people know this. So I lead our training team. One of my trainers just sent me a note and said, "Are you available tomorrow? I'm R2 for a task." I mean, that just makes life
Yeah,
easy. She's already
yeah.
diagnosed. She knows right where she is. I know I'll get on the call tomorrow and I already know her readiness level. So I do agree with you, Dallas. This is a conversation model and it works best when both people know it. We work a lot in organizations to help create a common language. We've actually developed a program for individual contributors that goes alongside of the situational leadership model. It's called situational performance ownership because it helps them own their performance and raise their hand and say, "I'm R4, I've got this, just get out of the way," or "I'm R2, here, give me some direction." So I love that. And I saw one other one that came in on personal relationships, and I just have to quickly hit it because, yes, I mean, Doc told me this a long time ago. When you know this model, you're a better coach, a better parent, a better volunteer. Like it fits in all phrases, all phases of influence because we think leadership is just influence. So I love the question. It definitely helps me in my personal relationships as well. So I like that.
Yeah, and there was a comment here. I think the key takeaway for me from all these is that as a leader, I need to lean in.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's helpful, because we give, this, we give an assessment in class, so you kind of get an understanding of what's your default leadership style,
Yeah.
but that's not always what people need. You kind of have a 25% chance of getting it right if you just use that one all the time. But if I look at
Yeah.
the assessment, and really understand, I learn to lean into the other styles because honestly, it's not about me. It's about the needs of the person. So I love that comment. It's really good.
And I love that. I wonder if we can there was a question about healthy high performance.
Yeah.
And I just want to pick your brain on that because I think it's, from this or what I assert, and Shirley, please let me know if I'm wrong. Right. We high performance is something we strive for.
Hmm.
And that slide that you showed about burnout, about attrition,
Yeah.
all of those
Yeah.
good things, right? Like
Yeah.
high performance without balance or health or
Right.
self-care leads to those things. But
Yeah.
we put lipstick on a pig kind of and call it high performance. And so what is that healthy? What is that way to protect um the individual with, yes, we want to be high performing and we want it to be healthy for you. So what does that balance look like?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think it goes back to that being a conversation model. So I'm thinking of a couple people on my team. When they are R4 for a task, that means they have taken ownership for it and they
Mhm.
know how to ask for what they need. And we've built enough of a relationship and trust that it's safe for them to ask any question. So what I do think it lives in that R4 category, but
Mhm.
R4 puts the ownership on the performer to ask for what they need, to ensure their self-care is where it needs. I'm not checking in all the time. Hey, are you taking care of yourself? Are you okay? I do check in. It's delegation, it's not abandonment, right? Autonomy and abandonment are different, but I do spend time checking on that, but part of what we agreed on is when I hand you a task and you're doing the work, I want you to be healthy. I want you to take care of yourself. I'd like you to be R4 for self-care and R4 for doing the work I'm asking you to do. So we talk about both. So what I've learned to do, Dallas, is in my one-on-ones and in my coaching of people on my team, I'm pretty balanced with talking about results and engagement. So
Hmm.
where I started on this conversation is, hey, how are we doing on results? How was that training session? How many days did you train last month? How are you doing on the admin? And flip, how are you doing at being home on the weekends? Are you taking off some time? Are you taking care of yourself? When's your next vacation? So I find the balance of conversation between success and engagement and equipping them to take ownership of their own readiness, self-care, and performance has worked well, and this framework supports those conversations.
I want to describe something that happened to me actually in this, and just through this terministic screen, because I feel like my leader actually like backed me up from delegate back to tell. And in it was during so I was executive enterprise coach at Whole Foods Market during the merger of Whole Foods and Amazon. So we all know Amazon has some um, we've high performance is a thing there. And I was going, leading the financial system merger and the integration. I was going and going and going. And John would tell me, like, how you doing? Doing okay?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
yeah,
Clearly I wasn't fine. And then he like, I feel like he kind of backed up through this. And then he was like, okay, let's talk about how, like, how's Liam? Like, what's going on? And then going back, hey, Dallas, you like taking time off is really good. Right. And he totally used like your team needs to see you have balance. Da, da, da.
hmm,
And then he was like, Dallas, do not come to work next week. Like, I mean,
right,
it was over a
yeah.
few weeks, but it feels like now I'm just making it up that it follows that, or what is um yeah, what's your take on that in this kind of in this model?
No, the same. I think giving people permission to like I think leaders are the worst role models for people who are going to get promoted because
Mhm.
they look at people with no boundaries and high work ethics and think, man, I can't do that. Or if I do, I have to sacrifice all these other things that are important to me. So I appreciate when people have healthy boundaries and
Mhm.
they like I find people on my team when they're healthy in their personal life, they're so much more effective in
For
their
sure.
work life. And I think the model just allows for a framework of that conversation. So we're having that on a pretty regular basis. But you know what it does? It allows people to take ownership
Mhm.
for their own performance, for their own well-being, and then allows us to have a framework for conversation around those things.
Yeah, and I was stubborn as a mule in that conversation, right? Like this was not okay. And
Yeah.
I really appreciated the way that I was in S4, was am high performing, but he was just backing it up in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Until I realized that I had probably gone to R1 because of the things that I allowed myself to,
Mhm.
my choices in that situation.
Yeah.
So, there's another question around health or healthy. To extend healthy, how does this extend to healthy relationship in teams and ways of
Mhm.
working?
Yeah, I think we're building on some of the comments we've already made,
Yeah.
right? If people can assess their self and own their readiness and ask for what they need instead of passively waiting for the leader to get it right, it equips the both parties to be involved in a conversation and contract for styles and have alignment on those things. So I feel like that's healthy because we're having conversations. The thing that we think supports this entire model is trust. So let's make sure there's trust, there's psychological safety. We spend a lot of time talking about personal power versus position power. And so, how
Mhm.
do I build personal power? Which, when I have personal power, people give me the right to influence them. So, you could call that trust, you could call that psychological safety. But when those things are in place, this model really works well. And in the absence of trust, people are guarded, right? They keep the armor up and they don't want to have real conversations. But I also think the model allows for objective conversations versus emotional things that can lead to more of a volatile
Mm.
conversation or situation.
Excellent. What
Right.
I
I'll
know
leave it
we're
for you
time
to spin.
flies,
Yeah.
right? I was about to
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
read my mind. I was about to ask, like, what can our participants take back? Like, what is
Yeah.
the nugget to take back and say, man, here's like this is the thing that we need to solve what? Like, what is the benefit?
Yeah. Well, and I like you see the benefits on here, but I love the conversation for the person who said, I feel like I just need to lean in. I think
Yeah.
if there's anything from this framework, it's take a pause, see where the person is, and see if you can align to their needs. And that's what this does. It empowers accountability, but it reduces time to autonomy. I like the agility that was on the first report that you showed.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the common language allows for those things. And so if there's one takeaway from this, if I said, what could you walk out of here with? It's understanding that on this list, you have a primary style, but that's not always the most effective style. And
Right.
so can you pause and just take a second to say, where is this person in their performance and what do they need from me? That is what this framework equips. It equips you to have the highest probability match that drives both success and engagement because we're meeting people where they are.
It's so funny as I was going through the class and I was becoming a facilitator. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I have to draw, I have to kind of just connect things. And I put a
Yeah.
big box in front of this box that said pause. And so like
Nice.
it wasn't like
That's
it's
cool.
maybe it's my
Yeah.
coding background, but it was like step zero.
Yeah.
Pause.
So good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it allows me to pause and then be intentional. Let me
exactly.
pause and assess and then
Yeah.
be intentional. And then you're in the moment too. You're there with the person, whether it's virtual or in person, you're pausing and you're keeping it about them. It's follower driven. It's not leader driven. It's not narcissistic. Here's my style. You better follow me. It's here, let me see where you are and let me adjust to you. It makes it almost that servant leadership model we hear so much about
Yeah.
because you're pausing to see what are their needs and then you're meeting them where they are.
I could not agree more. And as I'm a big advocate for psychological safety. I think as a coach, I have to be
Sure.
starting like pausing there. What you're
Mhm.
saying is the foundation of psychological safety. What is
Mm.
objective language? What is being present with a person? Not
Yeah.
thinking about the future, not thinking about the past. Who are you in this exact moment? Because you are exactly who you are and who you need to be right now.
Yeah, so good.
And that, man, right? Like think about a time that you have felt seen and you have felt heard.
Hmm.
And the complete acceptance and the trust that builds from that, which then you
Yeah,
can go in and you can have that authentic conversation, like the conversation model you're talking about. You can have an authentic conversation like I did with John. I'm
right.
like, I am useless right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love when people have permission to own their readiness and say things like, "Hey, I'm actually R1 right now. Could you help?" Or I'm R2 right
Yeah.
now. Here's what I need. But that doesn't happen without trust and psychological safety and personal
Mhm.
power and those things we've been talking about.
Yeah, completely agree. What do you think about, would you recommend this as a tool for mentors?
Yeah, that's really good. I feel like it is because as a mentor, I'm trying to it helps me to lead people, but it helps
Mm,
me to lead leaders of people as well. And
yeah.
that's where I find myself as a coach and as a mentor because what it gives me is a common language. I'm coaching a mentor right now, and she is mentoring someone who's new in the role that she's under leading. So now her and I have a framework to say, okay, you're actually leading this person at style 4 and they need style 2. And so she's now adjusting. We're practicing the conversation. And then she, in turn, begins to mentor her person with the appropriate style. So, absolutely. As I coach the coach or coach mentors or as I'm mentoring others, I think this framework's absolutely helpful for that.
I love that you just said that. I have a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old. And I have totally walked through this and we're starting to use it as, when you get the whole I can do it, mom. And they can. And we find out that they can't. Um, we leave some space and then it's just asked like, where do you think you are? And what evidence do you have
Yeah.
that you're there?
Yeah.
um
So
and
good.
it's just it is a way to talk about the thing not all the distractions that
Yeah.
usually come there.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, excellent. All right, friends. I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up today. As I'm finishing the obligatory close, please feel free to pop another question into the chat and we'll divert. But Chris, thank you so much. This was such a gift. Just bantering with you over like this thing that is so beneficial to organizations, people, families. Just like if you have to communicate with anybody,
Yeah.
please use this. Like this
That's right.
is
That's right.
right. If you have to talk, this is useful. That is my TED talk about this. If you can talk,
I love
it's
it.
useful, right? So thank you
So good.
so much. I know it's the evening for you. So we are so privileged to have you on a call in this neck of the woods. So thank you
Yeah. It was
so
my
much.
privilege. Yeah,
Thank
honor
you,
was mine.
everyone.
Thanks,
Oh,
Dallas. And thank you. Yeah, as you said, thanks everyone who logged in, engaged, asked good questions, and let us know how we can help. Please, Dallas, I don't know if people know how to get in touch with you or your organization, but
yeah,
if you
you
hear this
have
and want more.
you absolutely have in your email for this, you have all the information. Please go to Skills DX if you want more information, or reach out to Chris or myself on LinkedIn, and we will hook you up to whomever has the answers. It may not be us, but we'll find them for you.
We'll point. Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day, and we will talk to y'all next time.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.